Se7en on 1995. 20 Weird Facts You Didn't Know. Darkness. Rain. A city suffocating under its own decay, where evil lurks not only in alleyways but inside the human mind. Se7en, and directed by David Fincher, is not just a thriller. It is a cinematic nightmare etched into film history. For nearly 3 decades, this masterpiece has haunted audiences, all tied to one chilling question: what's in the box? Yet beyond the screen's oppressive shadows lies a behind-the-scenes world that is even darker, stranger, and more unsettling. Few people know that brutal conflicts broke out between Fincher and the studio over the film's original ending, or that Brad Pitt suffered a serious real injury during one of the chase sequences. Even the movie's most iconic prop, the infamous box, has a secret history that has never been fully revealed. And disturbingly, some of the grotesque crimes portrayed in the film were inspired by actual cases, blurring the line between fiction and reality in ways that make the viewing experience all the more unsettling. In this video, we're diving deep into 20 bizarre, hidden, and haunting facts about Se7en truths, lurking in the shadows of the production, details so obscure that even die-hard Fincher fans may have never heard them. Fact number 1. The ending that almost didn't survive. The ending of Se7en Mills discovering the box and pulling the trigger is now legendary, but it nearly never happened. New Line executives feared it was too bleak and pushed for safer alternatives, including a version where Somerset killed John Doe to spare Mills. David Fincher, scarred from studio interference on Alien Cubed, to refuse to compromise. Brad Pitt backed him, even threatening to walk if the finale was softened. Their combined pressure forced the studio to relent. What resulted was the devastating conclusion we know today, one that shocked audiences, redefined the crime thriller, and ensured Se7en would be remembered not as just another detective story, but as a cinematic nightmare carved in stone. Fact number 2. Brad Pitt's real injury became part of the film. During the intense foot chase through rain-soaked streets, Brad Pitt's character, Detective Mills, vaults across obstacles in pursuit of John Doe. What the cameras captured was more real than anyone intended. Pitt slipped during one of the takes, shattering his arm through a car windshield. The injury was severe, requiring surgery and leaving him with a noticeable scar. Production halted briefly, but rather than rewrite or conceal the accident, Fincher made a bold choice. He integrated the injury into the narrative. For the remainder of the film, Mills's bandaged arm became part of the character's exhaustion and vulnerability. This decision enhanced the sense of realism, showing a detective physically and emotionally worn down by the brutality of the case. What could have been a disastrous setback transformed into a haunting layer of authenticity, immortalized in every frame where Pitt winces in genuine pain. Fact number 3. Morgan Freeman almost turned down the role. Morgan Freeman's portrayal of Somerset is one of the most iconic detective performances in cinema, but he initially resisted the role. The script's relentless darkness and grim outlook on humanity gave him pause. Freeman, already celebrated for roles that radiated wisdom and dignity, questioned whether audiences would accept him embodying such despair. It was only after multiple conversations with Fincher, who argued that Somerset's weary perspective provided the story with its moral backbone, that Freeman agreed. His performance grounded the film, offering a counterbalance to Mills's impulsiveness. Without Freeman's gravitas, Se7en might have tipped too far into nihilism, but his quiet strength gave the horror a human center. Fact number 4. The title sequence redefined openings forever. From the moment the credits roll, viewers are unsettled. The jittery, scratch typography, paired with 9-inch nails as Closer, remixed by Trent Reznor, created one of the most disturbing title sequences ever made. Designed by Kyle Cooper, the sequence shows John Doe's meticulous journals being assembled, pages filled with manic handwriting, disturbing images, and obsessive notes. None of these journals were fake props. Hundreds were handwritten by the art department over weeks, each filled with grotesque, unsettling detail. This obsessive authenticity blurred the line between design and reality, and the title sequence became so influential, it redefined how Hollywood approached opening credits. Films like Fight Club and American Horror Story later borrowed heavily from this style. To this day, Se7en's opening remains a case study in how to unnerve an audience before a single line of dialogue is spoken. Fact number 5. The killer's apartment was a nightmare set. When Somerset and Mills finally discovered John Doe's lair, it feels less like a movie set and more like a descent into madness. Production designers went to extraordinary lengths to achieve this effect. The apartment was meticulously dressed with thousands of handwritten notebooks, jars of mysterious substances, and walls stained with filth. It took the art team 2 full months just to create the journals, filling each with rambling, obsessive scrawl to avoid any hint of fakery. The smell on set became overwhelming from the chemicals used to age the paper and stain the walls. Even the actors found it difficult to stay inside for long periods, describing the space as suffocating and psychologically disturbing. The result was an environment that didn't need much acting. Freeman and Pitt's discomfort is painfully genuine, adding to the sense that they were intruding into the twisted mind of a predator. Fact number 6. Kevin Spacey demanded his name be left out. When Se7en was released, audiences were shocked not only by the film's ending but also by the sudden appearance of Kevin Spacey as John Doe. That shock was by design. Spacey insisted that his name not appear in the opening credits, arguing that revealing his involvement would spoil the film's suspense. The studio reluctantly agreed, and Spacey's credit was pushed to the very end, after the closing scene. This unconventional choice amplified the mystery. Viewers spent most of the film expecting the killer to be played by some unknown face, only to be blindsided by a recognizable star stepping into the role. It was a marketing gamble that paid off, cementing one of cinema's most disturbing villain reveals. Fact number 7. Real police and crime scene photos were used. To achieve authenticity, Fincher's team studied real homicide cases. The grisly crime scenes depicted in Se7en were not merely Hollywood inventions. Many were inspired by actual crime scene photos obtained during research. The production design team recreated disturbing details: the grime of neglected apartments, the rot of decomposing food, the clutter of obsession directly from reality. This gave the film an almost documentary-like edge, making each crime scene feel alarmingly plausible. The infamous sloth victim, in particular, was designed after months of studying forensic photography. When the police advisors visited the set, even they admitted the scenes felt uncomfortably real. Fact number 8. The deadly sins had hidden symbolism. Each of the 7 deadly sins depicted in the murders was designed with layers of symbolism that extended beyond the obvious. For instance, the gluttony crime scene wasn't just about overeating. It featured a victim force-fed canned spaghetti, a comment on consumer excess. The greed victim was surrounded by luxury items arranged to feel like a shrine, emphasizing the worship of wealth. Even the lighting was manipulated. Pride was shot with harsh, vanity-like illumination, while sloth was kept in perpetual darkness. These details weren't explained on screen, but Fincher wanted them to seep into the subconscious of the audience, turning each sin into a full sensory experience rather than a simple label. Fact number 9. The filming location was a mystery city. One of the most unsettling qualities of Se7en is that it never reveals exactly where the story takes place. The city is unnamed, a rain-drenched purgatory filled with decay and crime. To achieve this effect, Fincher combined multiple locations. Much of the film was shot in Los Angeles, but additional exteriors were captured in San Francisco and Philadelphia. By blending urban environments, he created a composite city that felt familiar yet alien, recognizable yet nowhere in particular. This decision stripped the audience of geographic comfort. Viewers couldn't say, "At least I don't live there," because the city could be anywhere. The result was a universal sense of dread, as though Se7en's nightmare world existed just outside your own doorstep. Fact number 10. Rain was a character in itself. Fincher insisted that nearly every exterior scene be drenched in rain. This wasn't merely for atmosphere, it symbolized the city's moral rot, as though the heavens themselves were trying to wash away corruption. The rain also served a practical purpose. It concealed continuity errors during complex shoot schedules, masking lighting shifts and location changes. But the endless downpour had a psychological effect on cast and crew. Actors described feeling drained and oppressed by the constant wetness, mirroring their characters' despair. For audiences, the rain became another layer of suffocation, pressing down on every scene. It was less a backdrop than a character, whispering relentlessly that this was a world where the sun never shines. Fact number 11. The sloth scene traumatized viewers and crew. Perhaps the most disturbing crime scene in Se7en is the sloth victim, a skeletal body strapped to a bed for a year. The makeup team, led by Rob Bottin, spent weeks crafting the prosthetics. They cast a real actor, Michael Reed McKay, whose naturally thin frame added to the horror. His body was covered with latex sores, and his teeth were artificially blackened. Even more disturbing, when detectives lean in close, the victim suddenly gasps for air. That jolt terrified not only audiences but even members of the film crew who weren't warned of the effect. Test screenings reported people fainting in theaters, and police consultants admitted the depiction was so accurate it looked like a genuine forensic case. It remains one of the most shocking sequences in thriller history. Fact number 12. Fincher shot multiple takes of every scene. David Fincher became notorious during Se7en for his relentless perfectionism. He often demanded dozens of takes, pushing actors to repeat scenes until exhaustion stripped away any trace of artifice. For one simple dialogue exchange, Fincher shot over 40 takes. His reasoning: by the time actors reached physical and emotional fatigue, their performances would carry a rawness impossible to fake. While some crew members complained about the punishing pace, Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman later admitted that Fincher's method added a weary authenticity, perfectly suited for the film's grim tone. It was filmmaking as endurance test, mirroring the character's own descent into despair. Fact number 13. The notebooks cost $15,000 and took 2 months to make. John Doe's apartment was filled with hundreds of handwritten journals, each one packed with disturbing entries. Rather than create a few fake pages and repeat them, Fincher demanded complete authenticity. The art department spent 2 months handcrafting the books, with each entry written line by line in manic scrawl. The cost ballooned to around $15,000, an enormous amount for what appeared only briefly on screen. Yet Fincher insisted that the detail mattered. Even if audiences didn't consciously notice, the authenticity would radiate through the frame. Years later, those notebooks became legendary examples of obsessive set design, proving that the devil truly is in the details. Fact number 14. The ending was shot twice. Though Pitt and Fincher fought hard to preserve the original ending, the studio still forced them to shoot an alternate version just in case. In this sanitized ending, Somerset shoots John Doe before Mills can, preventing the personal tragedy and offering a glimmer of moral order. Fincher filmed it reluctantly, but when test audiences watched both cuts, the reaction was overwhelming. Viewers found the alternate ending forgettable, even disappointing. The original, devastating conclusion left them shaken, and that was exactly the point. Armed with this data, Fincher convinced the studio to stick with the darker version. Ironically, the studio's attempt to protect the film ended up proving the necessity of its brutality. Fact number 15. A studio mix-up almost changed the film forever. In one of Hollywood's strangest accidents, Fincher first received the unedited original script by mistake. Studio executives had intended to send him a sanitized revision, but a clerical error delivered Andrew Kevin Walker's raw draft, the one with the infamous head-in-the-box ending. Fincher loved it immediately and signed on, believing that was the version New Line wanted. By the time the mistake was discovered, Fincher was already attached and adamant. Had the studio sent the intended script, Fincher might have walked away, or worse, the film could have been made with a watered-down finale. That single error of paperwork ensured Se7en became the uncompromising classic we know today. Fact number 16. The film nearly received an NC-17 rating. From its graphic depictions of mutilation to its relentlessly bleak tone, Se7en pushed the boundaries of what a mainstream studio release could show in the mid-1992. When the MPAA, Motion Picture Association of America, first reviewed the film, there was genuine concern it might be slapped with an NC-17 rating, effectively dooming it at the box office. Fincher and the editing team walked a razor's edge, trimming frames by fractions of a second to imply horror rather than linger on it. The infamous lust scene, for example, was cut strategically, so the weaponized prop was never explicitly shown in use. By emphasizing reaction shots and aftermath instead of graphic detail, Fincher created something paradoxically more disturbing because what the audience imagines is worse than what could ever be filmed. The careful balance allowed the movie to avoid censorship, but just barely. Fact number 17. Gwyneth Paltrow was reluctant to join the cast. At the time of filming, Gwyneth Paltrow was relatively unknown, and the role of Tracy Mills, though crucial to the story's ending, was small compared to the male leads. Paltrow initially turned it down, worried that playing the wife character would typecast her. It was Brad Pitt, her then boyfriend, who convinced her to meet with Fincher. During the meeting, Fincher reportedly pitched Tracy not as a victim, but as the emotional core of the story, the character whose humanity made the finale unbearable. Paltrow agreed, and her restrained, tender performance gave the film its devastating final note. Without her presence, the infamous ending might have felt hollow, lacking the emotional weight that made it unforgettable. Fact number 18. John Doe's fingerprints were a puzzle. In the film, detectives identify John Doe through fingerprints found at a crime scene. To make this sequence convincing, the props department went to extraordinary lengths. They created thousands of fake fingerprint records, complete with authentic police formatting and data. But Fincher didn't want the audience to see random gibberish. He wanted everything to look real if paused. Each record included plausible names, numbers, and case histories. Ironically, one of the fake names slipped into the database was that of a real-life police officer, who later spotted it during a screening and laughed. This obsessive detail gave the scene a strange authenticity, reinforcing Fincher's obsession with realism, even in fleeting shots. Fact number 19. A fake ending was leaked to the crew. Because of the secrecy surrounding the script, especially the shocking finale, Fincher feared leaks. To protect the surprise, he distributed a fake ending to many members of the crew. In this version, Mills and Somerset both survive a final shootout with John Doe, wrapping the story with conventional closure. Only the principal cast and a handful of crew had access to the true ending. This secrecy worked. Even within the production, rumors swirled about how the movie would conclude. When the real ending was finally shot, many crew members were stunned, admitting later that they hadn't believed Fincher would go through with something so uncompromising. Fact number 20. The studio didn't know how to market it. Once the film was complete, New Line faced a dilemma. How do you sell a thriller this bleak? Traditional marketing strategies highlighting romance, comedy, or triumph were impossible. Instead, they leaned into mystery. Trailers emphasized the star power of Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, while downplaying the grotesque crimes. Kevin Spacey's absence from promotional material further deepened the intrigue. Early posters featured cryptic lists of the 7 deadly sins rather than conventional imagery. Despite studio fears, the campaign worked. Curiosity drove audiences to theaters, and word of mouth about the shocking finale transformed Se7en into a sleeper hit. By embracing the darkness rather than sanitizing it, the marketing turned a risky film into one of the defining thrillers of the 1992nd. Bonus fact. The library scene's hidden inspiration. One of the most quietly unsettling moments in Se7en is Somerset alone in the library, researching the 7 deadly sins. The atmosphere, dim lights, Gregorian chants, towering shelves of knowledge, feels like a cathedral of dread. What many don't know is that this sequence was inspired directly by Fincher's own experiences as a teenager wandering public libraries late at night. He recalled the eeriness of vast, silent halls, where knowledge felt both enlightening and suffocating. To replicate that feeling, Fincher worked with the cinematographer Darius Kanji to light the scene entirely with practical lamps, creating pools of warm glow surrounded by oppressive darkness. Adding another layer of realism, the production borrowed actual reference texts from theological collections, ensuring Somerset's research wasn't just staged. Morgan Freeman, ever meticulous, insisted on learning how to handle the books and tools exactly as a real detective might. The chanting heard in the background wasn't stock audio, but recordings from an obscure monastery in Spain, chosen to evoke the haunting weight of ancient judgment. Though brief, the library scene encapsulates Se7en's essence, knowledge as both salvation and curse. It underscores the film's central truth that even with centuries of wisdom, humanity remains trapped in cycles of sin and violence. Se7en isn't just a thriller. It's a descent into a world where morality drowns under endless rain, and truth is a knife that cuts too deep. If you thought you knew everything about David Fincher's masterpiece, these 21 facts prove that shadows still hold secrets. If you want more journeys into the hidden corners of cinema, don't just watch, step deeper. Subscribe to Behind the Fact, share this video with those who think they've seen it all, and join us as we continue peeling back the layers of film history, one unsettling truth at a time.